I clutched my battered tote as the bus doors groaned open, unleashing a surge of bodies jostling for space. My heart thundered against my ribs. Today was the day my landlord's final notice became due. I'd spent the night wrestling with panic, but in that moment, I saw him. A frail man, shoulders bowed under invisible weight, gripping the pole as if it were his last lifeline. The morning air clung heavy as I boarded, a mix of exhaust and damp concrete. Commuters pushed and muttered, their expressions glazed with fatigue, their urgency crushing. My tote dug into my hip, seams threatening to split beneath the weight of groceries and my mother's medical reports. Rent was due today. Eviction loomed like a guillotine. Every jostle reminded me of how precarious my world had become. The bus lurched, groaning forward on screeching wheels. I steadied myself against the cold pole, my palm slick with sweat. Neon signs outside blurred past the fogged glass, a city alive yet uncaring of individual despair. My mind circled endlessly. Bills, medication, late notices. Each thought pressed harder until I felt trapped within my own skull. And then, through the sea of strangers, I noticed him. At the rear exit stood an old man, posture bent yet strangely dignified. His coat was threadbare, seams frayed, elbows worn to the lining. A faded cap rested on thin white hair, shadowing eyes the color of storm clouds. His hands trembled as they gripped the rail, knuckles pale. There was fragility in his form, but an undeniable strength in his stance, as though he had weathered storms I couldn't imagine. Compassion stirred in me, unbidden. My struggles weighed heavily, yet in that moment I recognized another's burden. Without thinking, I squeezed past bodies and offered my seat. He hesitated, eyes flickering with disbelief, before lowering himself carefully. Relief softened his face. I handed him my half-empty bottle of water when a cough racked his chest. His hands shook as he lifted it, sipping slowly. Watching him, I felt the world still. Among ringing phones and blaring music, we created a small, quiet sanctuary. "Thank you," he murmured. His voice rasped but carried a sincerity that pierced me. Heat rose to my cheeks. I brushed a strand of hair aside, embarrassed by how meaningful his gratitude felt. A woman across the aisle sneered. "It's just a seat," she said loudly, contempt dripping from her words. Shame pricked at me, but when I looked back at him, I found steady eyes filled with respect. His nod seemed to say, "Stand firm. Don't let kindness be diminished." My spine straightened, my shame dissolved into resolve. We sat in silence as the city rolled past. I studied the faint tremor of his hands, the scattered age spots, the quiet composure etched into his profile. I longed to know his story, to understand what had brought him here, this morning, to this very bus. When the driver announced my stop, I rose reluctantly. The man stood brushing invisible dust from his coat. He extended his arm toward me, offering balance amid the crowd. I accepted, surprised at the warmth of his grip. His gesture felt like recognition, as though our small exchange carried greater weight. But then I froze. In his other hand, he held a pen, not ordinary plastic, but golden, engraved with an intricate crest. The metal gleamed, unmistakable in its craftsmanship. It spoke of heritage, of power, of secrets. My chest tightened. His eyes met mine, calm and knowing. For a moment it felt as though he was revealing part of himself deliberately, as if waiting for this exact instant. Then, with a polite nod, he slipped into the flow of passengers and was gone. I stepped off the bus, legs shaky, the city air sharp against my lungs. My tote felt heavier than before, but inside me, something had shifted. That pen burned in my thoughts. Its gleam, its crest, the mystery it carried. Who was he? Why reveal it to me? The bus rumbled away, carrying him into anonymity, yet leaving me altered. I stared at the spot where he had sat, the seat still warm from his presence. My heart thudded with questions. A simple seat, a sip of water, a moment of human connection, yet they now felt like the prologue to something far greater. I turned the pen over in my mind, its crest unfamiliar yet hauntingly personal. As the city hums around me, I realize this chance encounter, this simple act of kindness, could be the gateway to something far beyond my wildest dreams. But what stakes lie hidden behind that golden pen? And when our paths cross again, will I be ready to face the truth he holds? Our brief exchange felt ordinary, until his first words pierced straight through my defenses. In that rattling aisle, I braced myself for polite small talk, but instead, I found my deepest fears laid bare. Suddenly, this stranger was no longer just a seatmate. He was the first person who truly saw me. The bus rattled on, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and I tried to steady my breathing. My act of kindness, so small, so instinctive, still echoed in me. I hadn't expected thanks, but when the old man turned his gaze on me, it was unlike anything I'd felt before. His storm-gray eyes were sharp yet gentle, carrying the weight of untold stories. "You have a big heart," he said. The words cut through me, not as flattery, but as a revelation. I blinked, startled, as though he had glimpsed something I had long buried under bills, deadlines, and exhaustion. Thank you," I stammered, my voice catching. My cheeks warmed, not just from embarrassment but from a hunger I hadn't recognized, the need to be seen. Almost without thinking, I whispered truths I usually kept locked away. "My mom's next chemotherapy payment came yesterday. Rent's overdue. I've been scavenging coins just to get by." The confession slipped out uninvited, pulled by his quiet attention. For the first time in months, I felt the authorities, not in my chest, ease, if only slightly. He listened, his posture stooped yet resilient. His silence wasn't empty. It was steady, supportive, grounding. Finally he spoke. "I know that desperation." His voice carried the rhythm of memory. He described his youth, nights spent sleeping on benches after his family lost everything, mornings chasing any work he could find, winters so bitter they cut into his bones. Employers judged his tattered coat more than his abilities, yet even in hunger, he chose dignity. "Hardship strips everything but kindness," he said softly. Tears stung my eyes. His survival mirrored my own fears, yet he had endured and risen. I felt kinship, fragile but real, forged between strangers on a bus. The vehicle jolted over a pothole. I swayed, and his hand shot out, steadying me. His grip was warm, firm, reassuring. Vulnerability and strength mingled in that touch, as if kindness passed both ways. I found my courage. "Why are you here on this bus?" "Someone like you." I hesitated, unsure of how to phrase my suspicion. He smiled faintly, lines deepening on his face. "Because hope lives here," he said, "among those who give without expecting." I look for such people. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small metallic card, edges gleaming under the flickering light. My pulse quickened as he placed it in my hand. Embossed on it was the same crest I'd glimpsed on his golden pen. Beneath it, coordinates etched with precision, numbers that pointed somewhere I didn't yet understand. I swallowed. "Why me?" "Because your story matters," he said. His words carried neither pity nor doubt, only conviction. I opened up further, surprising myself. I told him of my writing dreams, of rejections piling in my inbox, of nights I lay awake imagining lives I might help if only I had the chance. His gaze softened. "Don't let fear silence your voice," he urged. Then he shared advice, practical, hard-earned, how he budgeted when he had nothing but scraps, how he networked using borrowed tools, how he pushed through imposter syndrome by remembering the people depending on him. Each lesson was laced with empathy, not condescension. The bus slowed at a major intersection. Through the window, a skyscraper gleamed. Its nameplate read, "Sterling Enterprises." My stomach dropped. Whispers of that company had drifted through the city. Philanthropy, secrecy, power. I dared a glance at him. His expression flickered as he looked toward the tower, almost wistful. Then my phone buzzed. My hands shook as I pulled it from my tote. On the screen, a notification. Adrian Sterling. My breath caught. I looked at him. The frail commuter, the mysterious stranger, the man with storm-gray eyes. He gave the faintest nod, confirming what my heart already suspected. The bus braked at my stop. People pushed forward, eager to escape into their routines. I hesitated, torn between stepping into my familiar struggle or staying to unravel this impossible mystery. He rose too, slipping the metallic card back into his pocket. The crowd swirled between us. For a moment, I thought he would vanish, but then he looked directly at me, steady, deliberate. His nod carried both invitation and warning. My phone vibrated again, his name still glowing on the screen, waiting for me to act. My pulse pounded. Around us, the world carried on. Footsteps, chatter, the hiss of the bus doors. Yet for me, time had narrowed to a single choice. My finger hovers over the green answer button on my phone as the bus doors open. If I step off, I return to my life of mounting bills and shattered hope. If I stay, I dive headfirst into a world I never imagined. A world where the man beside me might be the key to rewriting my destiny. In that moment, time stands still. One choice will shatter the boundaries between stranger and savior, forever altering the story of who I am. When he placed that glossy card in my trembling hand, my heart lurched. What secret did it hold? I felt as though the world had paused mid-pulse, every face on that crowded bus blurring into the background as my fingers closed around something that might rewrite my fate. The cold metal edges bit into my skin, and for a single, suspended moment, I understood that my life was about to fracture into before and after. The bus rocked over another bump, and my grip tightened around the mysterious card. It wasn't ordinary. Its surface gleamed under the weak fluorescent light, smooth like polished stone, impossibly crafted for something handed so casually. In the center, a crest shimmered, a shield, vines curling around its edges, a star at the top, and words I couldn't decipher beneath. My fingers traced the emblem, as if by doing so I could unlock its meaning. Below the crest, a name, Sterling. My pulse quickened. The name carried weight. Sterling Enterprises, a company rumored to shape the world from behind mirrored towers. Philanthropy, secrecy, influence. Why would someone who looked like a frail commuter carry such a card? And why give it to me? He leaned closer, his voice hushed. "Keep it safe," he whispered. His storm-gray eyes flicked toward the driver's mirror, as if wary of listening ears. The words lodged in me, heavy with significance. The bus bell chimed. Elm Street, next stop. I should have risen, should have returned to my life of overdue bills and endless struggle. But my body refused to move. The card burned against my palm, anchoring me to the moment. The stranger gave me a deliberate nod, pressing the card more firmly into my hand before slipping away into the crowd of passengers. Within seconds, he was gone. I stumbled off the bus into drizzle. The city swarmed with noise, horns chatter, the hiss of tires on wet asphalt, but all I heard was the whisper of his command. Keep it safe. Raindrops speckled the card's surface, rolling off without leaving a mark. At a nearby cafe, I slid into a booth, heart hammering. I laid the card on the table, its crest gleaming in the soft lamplight. On the back, I discovered coordinates etched in faint silver numbers, stretching to 6 decimal places. My breath hitched. Coordinates so precise could point to a single spot in the city. With shaking hands, I typed them into my phone. The map zoomed into downtown, straight to a skyscraper I'd only ever admired from afar. Sterling Enterprises headquarters. The name burned into me. Could this card truly be a key to that tower? The barista set a mug of coffee on my table, breaking my trance. Steam curled upward, blurring the card for a heartbeat before revealing it again, like a magician's trick. I snapped photos, texting a friend who worked in corporate archives. "Do you recognize this crest? These coordinates?" Minutes later, a reply buzzed my phone. Sterling Enterprises. Crest matches their private seal. Be careful. The words jolted me. Why me? Why now? I turned the card again, tracing every detail. That's when I saw it. Tiny engraving, almost invisible in the cafe light. My name. Below it, a time. 10 a.m. The air rushed from my lungs. My name. My time. Whoever gave me this card had not stumbled upon me by accident. They had sought me out, prepared for me, expected me. My mind spun with questions. How could he know me? What awaited me at that skyscraper tomorrow? Was this a gift, a test, or a trap? The cafe blurred around me. Students studying, couples chatting, baristas calling orders. My world had narrowed to the card and its promise. I pressed it flat against the table, feeling its cool weight, as if grounding myself to reality. Somewhere in the back of my mind, fear whispered, "Walk away. Burn it. Forget it." But louder than fear was something else. Curiosity, hunger, the faintest spark of hope that maybe this was the doorway out of the struggle I had been drowning in. The card glowed faintly under the cafe's warm light, and I knew, tomorrow I would follow its summons, no matter the cost. Lightning forks overhead just as I close my umbrella, momentarily illuminating the card in my hand and revealing, alongside the coordinates, a second engraving I hadn't spotted in the cafe's glow. My own name, followed by a time. 10 a.m. My breath stutters. Who could know me intimately enough to issue a summons so precise? As the city hum swells around me, I feel watched, even as I stand alone. Tomorrow's dawn will bring answers, or deeper mysteries, and I realize that accepting this invitation will change everything I thought I knew about myself and the man who entrusted me with this card. Driven by curiosity and desperation, I hunted down every scrap of information that card offered. My life depended on it. In the stillness of my apartment, I felt as though I'd been handed a lifeline by fate itself, and I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. Back in my tiny apartment, I flicked on the desk lamp, its weak glow casting long shadows across stacks of overdue bills. I laid the card on top of them like it was royalty resting on peasant shoulders. My fingers traced its silver coordinates again, memorizing every digit. The faint embossing of my name shimmered under the light, haunting me. 10 o'clock. Tomorrow. The walls around me, peeling wallpaper, humming refrigerator, the drip of the leaky faucet, felt suffocating. This room had been my cage, filled with reminders of everything I hadn't achieved. But tonight, the card transformed it into a war room. I booted up my laptop. The fan whined like it resented the task, but the screen flickered to life. Into the search bar, I typed Sterling Enterprises crest symbol coordinates. The results were a mess. Conspiracy forums, anonymous posts, fragments of rumor. Some claimed Sterling funded underground labs. Others swore the crest marked a secret society. A few whispered of hidden philanthropy. None of it was solid. Frustrated, I texted my college friend Priya, now a corporate researcher with access to databases I could only dream of. Need your help. Urgent. Discreet. Recognize this crest. Coordinates attached. I attached photos of the card, my hands trembling as if I were handling contraband. While I waited, I scribbled frantic notes in my journal. Why me? Why tomorrow? Who really is Adrian Sterling? The questions looped like restless crows in my skull. An hour crawled by. Then my phone buzzed. Priya's reply was blunt. That crest is Sterling Enterprises. Coordinates equals HQ downtown. This is serious. Be careful. My breath caught. HQ, the very tower I had stared at countless times from the bus window, wishing I could step inside. Now, somehow, I had been invited. Pulling up satellite view, I zoomed into the coordinates. The skyscraper gleamed on my screen, glass reflecting the city like a mirror. At street view, I saw the revolving doors, the spotless marble lobby, the cameras positioned with military precision. My throat tightened. I didn't belong anywhere near that world. And yet, the card said otherwise. I stood and paced the room, hands shaking. Should I go? Could I risk it? Or was walking away the bigger danger? I dialed my mother, forcing cheer into my tone as I promised to bring her medicine tomorrow. She offered to make me breakfast, but I declined, citing an appointment. I didn't dare tell her the truth. After hanging up, I returned to the card. My eyes burned from staring at it so long, but I couldn't let go. Every detail was a riddle. Every engraving was a command. I pulled open my closet, searching for something halfway professional. My old jeans and faded t-shirts mocked me. Finally, I found a wrinkled blazer and a blouse that still carried the faint scent of my last failed interview. I laid them on the chair, imagining myself walking through Sterling's gleaming lobby. For the first time in months, my reflection in the mirror didn't look entirely defeated. It looked like someone on the brink of transformation. Dawn crept through the blinds, pink light painting the card gold. I snapped a photo of it beside my journal and wrote, 10 a.m. tomorrow. My life changes. I hovered over the post button on my private blog, then stopped. Number. This wasn't something to share. It was mine alone. I slipped the card into my coat pocket, feeling its weight press against my chest. That weight was more than metal. It was possibility. Then, knock. The sound jolted me, sharp, insistent, rattling the frame. My heart slammed into my ribs. I glanced at the clock. 2:37 a.m. No one visited me at this hour. I snatched the card from my pocket, but it was gone. My breath froze. I tore through my bag, the couch cushions, my desk. Nothing. Another knock. Louder this time. Terror clawed at me. Whoever was outside had taken it. Or maybe they were here for me. I crept toward the door, barefoot, pulse hammering in my ears. Slowly, I turned the knob. The hallway stretched empty, silent, dimly lit. But on the threshold lay a muddy footprint, too large to be mine. It pointed toward the stairwell. The card had vanished, but its absence was a command louder than its presence had ever been. The foyer light overhead flickers as I step into the hallway, the echo of that final knock still reverberating in my chest. The card is gone, and with it, the certainty of my invitation. Yet on the floor, etched into the dust, is a set of smudged footprints leading toward the stairwell. Footprints too large to belong to me, yet eerily deliberate. My pulse pounds as I realize someone or something wants me to follow, to chase the clues I thought I'd uncovered. And as the echo of the last footstep fades, I know that my only choice is to descend into the unknown, guided not by a card, but by the footprints that now mark my path. Standing before that mirrored tower, I felt both insignificant and electrified, its glass facade reflecting my own uncertainty and ambition back at me, daring me to step through its doors and claim whatever destiny awaited inside. My pulse thundered in my ears as I imagined the worlds contained within those walls, each pane of glass a threshold to opportunities I could scarcely allow myself to believe were real. The morning air was crisp, sharp enough to sting my cheeks as I approached the plaza. Ahead of me loomed the skyscraper, glass shimmering like 1,000 watchful eyes. Its reflection caught fragments of the city, buses, commuters, clouds, and returned them magnified, as if to remind me that I was smaller than the world I hoped to change. I clutched the edge of my blazer, the one professional piece of clothing I owned, and forced my steps forward. The revolving doors spun with a steady rhythm, swallowing suited executives without pause. When my turn came, my reflection warped across the glass, nervous and out of place. Still I pressed through, emerging into a lobby so vast it seemed to belong to another dimension. White marble floors gleamed under chandeliers that glittered like constellations. A waterfall installation trickled behind the security desk, its sound soothing, yet surreal. I froze at the threshold, feeling like an imposter trespassing on sacred ground. The security guard glanced up, expression unreadable. My hands trembled as I produced the metallic card. For a heartbeat, I feared he would laugh or wave me away. Instead, he scanned it silently. The barrier gate slid open with a soft beep. No questions asked. Relief surged through me, mingled with awe. The card was real. My presence here was sanctioned. I walked forward, heels tapping lightly on the polished floor. Corridors stretched out like arteries, their walls lined with frosted glass offices. Each door bore a discreet plaque: legal, finance, global strategy. Employees moved briskly, voices low, faces focused. I kept my gaze ahead, terrified that even one glance of uncertainty would betray me. Then, "Miss." "Your name?" I spun, startled. A woman in a tailored gray suit approached, clipboard in hand, her stride purposeful. Her eyes flicked briefly to the card I still clutched. "Welcome. I'm Simone," she said smoothly. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you. Please follow me." Her tone carried no warmth, but neither did it judge. She moved ahead, and I trailed behind, my heart a drumbeat. We passed a gallery of oil portraits. Each frame held a previous Sterling leader, a Victorian woman with stern eyes, a mid-century executive with a globe beneath his hand, a man from the jazz era with cigarette poised at his lip. Each inscription bore mottos: integrity above all, innovation for humanity. I slowed, absorbing the weight of lineage, before Simone urged me onward. Finally, she stopped before massive mahogany doors, each embossed with the Sterling crest. With a swipe of her badge, they opened soundlessly, revealing an office that seemed less like a workplace and more like a kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the skyline, sunlight bouncing across towers and streets. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with patents, awards, bound volumes. In the center stood a desk of dark oak, pristine except for a single sleek pen angled perfectly across its surface. And behind that desk, him, Adrian Sterling. Even before he rose, his presence filled the space. Silver hair swept neatly back, shoulders squared, eyes storm gray and piercing. When he stood, it felt as if gravity itself shifted. "Miss." "Your name," he greeted, voice calm, resonant, steady. He extended his hand. I stepped forward, legs unsteady, and placed my palm in his. His grip was firm, neither overpowering nor casual, but charged with authority. A strange calm washed over me. This was the man who had sat on a bus as though ordinary, who had carried himself like a shadow, who had given me the card that upended my world. Simone slipped out, leaving us alone. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite. I lowered myself carefully, resisting the urge to fidget. My eyes darted to the folder on his desk, my name embossed on the cover, glinting faintly in the light. "You've already proven one thing," Adrian began, voice even, "that you choose compassion even when your own burdens are heavy. That is why you are here." My throat tightened. Questions tumbled in me. Why me? Why now? What do you want? But I stayed silent, sensing he wasn't finished. He slid the folder toward me. Its weight thudded softly against the desk. "Inside," he said, "is the opportunity and the obligation. You'll need to change lives." My fingers hovered above it, the embossed crest pressing like a brand into my vision. Beyond these pages lay answers, and perhaps chains. The skyline gleamed behind him, the city alive with movement. But in that room, time paused. As I settled into the chair opposite his desk, he placed a folder before me, its cover bearing only the crest and my name in embossed letters. The city's hum crept back through the windows as he slid the folder toward me, his eyes never leaving mine. "Inside," he said, "is the opportunity and the obligation. You'll need to change lives. I lifted the folder's edge, heart pounding, knowing that when its seal broke, I would cross a threshold from which there was no return, and my life would be forever aligned with the secrets of Sterling Enterprises. When he offered his hand, I barely recognized the man behind the myth. His presence was at once regal and disarmingly human, as if the same person who could alter the course of thousands of lives with a signature could also tremble with the weight of his own past. As our fingers met in that firm handshake, every rumor I'd ever heard about Adrian Sterling dissolved into the warm certainty of shared experience, and I realized that the legend before me had once been a stranger, just like me. The silence in the office stretched after I sat. Adrian Sterling leaned back slightly, his eyes fixed on mine, storm gray but not cold. There was gravity in his gaze, as though he carried both power and burden in equal measure. "I know you have questions," he began, his voice steady but softened by memory. "And I owe you the truth." His words disarmed me. I had expected rehearsed lines, the polished speech of a CEO used to commanding rooms. Instead, what I heard was something rawer, more human. He folded his hands together on the desk, then leaned forward. "I wasn't born into this tower," he said. "I was born into struggle." I blinked. He went on, his tone almost confessional. He described a childhood marked by hunger, standing in line at soup kitchens, wearing shoes with holes that let in winter's bite. His family had lost everything in a single downturn, and for years they clawed for survival. "I slept on buses when we couldn't afford rent," he admitted. "I learned to stay awake with one eye, open, because theft and violence were constant companions. But I also learned something else. The smallest kindness could keep a person alive. A stranger sharing half a sandwich, someone offering their seat." His eyes flicked to me knowingly. "Gestures like yours." A lump formed in my throat. His story reflected my own struggles, my mother's medical bills, the eviction notices, but magnified through decades of survival. He continued. "As I built Sterling Enterprises, I carried those memories. I vowed never to forget what it meant to be powerless. That's why I created the card." He tapped the desk gently. "An experiment, yes, but also a search. To find those who act with compassion without knowing they're being watched." I shifted uncomfortably. "You tracked me?" He nodded without flinching. "Public records, medical filings, eviction threats. I saw your situation, and I saw your choice. You still gave. Even when you had nothing, my cheeks burned. The thought of my private struggles laid bare to this powerful man made me want to shrink into my seat. But his expression wasn't judgmental. It was almost sorrowful, as if he bore guilt for intruding into my life. "I didn't do it to shame you," he said softly. "I did it to find people who embody the values this company was built to serve. Resilience, empathy, integrity." Tears pricked my eyes. No one had framed my pain that way before, not as weakness, but as proof of strength. Then, with a measured breath, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder, the same one that had sat before me. He pushed it across the desk until it rested under my hands. "I want to invest in you," he said, "not as charity, but as partnership. This is your opportunity to lead." I hesitated, fingertips brushing the embossed crest. My heart thundered in my ears. "Inside," he explained, "is an offer to join our foundation as lead researcher for community initiatives. A salary, housing, support, a chance to channel your empathy into change." I froze. Was this real? A man I'd met on a bus was offering me not just money, but purpose. I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Say yes," Adrian replied, his voice calm but firm. For a moment, the weight of everything I carried, rent, debt, fear, pressed against me. And then, like a door cracking open, I glimpsed possibility, using my voice, my heart, to change not just my story, but others. Before I could respond, the silence was shattered. The screen behind Adrian's desk flickered violently. Red letters flashed across the glass. System breach. The calm atmosphere collapsed into chaos. Adrian shot to his feet, his jaw tightening. He pressed a button under his desk, and the office doors locked with a metallic click. His storm-gray eyes sharpened. "We have a problem," he said. His voice suddenly clipped, urgent. "Stay here." "Trust no one," I stiffened, my hand still resting on the unopened folder. My chest constricted as I realized that this was no ordinary job offer. Whatever I had stepped into carried risks far beyond late rent or overdue bills. The room seemed to shrink, the hum of the city outside drowned by the red glow of warning lights. My heartbeat merged with the alarm, each thud echoing. What have I gotten myself into? The words blazed like a warning in the dim glow of the monitors. In the silence that followed, the gravity of our conversation cracked, and a new urgency swept into the room. Sterling Enterprises, my future, even my safety, was suddenly at risk. He rose from his chair, eyes darkening with resolve. "We have a problem," he said, voice clipped. "Stay here and trust no one." My breath caught as the doors locked with a definitive click. Moments ago, I had been on the cusp of a new beginning. Now I realized I was caught in the eye of a storm that threatened everything we had just set in motion. Before I could even process the warning flashing on the screen, he slid a heavy cream-colored envelope across the desk, its weight promising salvation, yet humming with the electricity of unknown obligations. My pulse thundered as I imagined what lay inside. A lifeline, perhaps, or a tether that would bind me irrevocably to this man's world. In that instant, everything I thought I knew about chance encounters and fate was shattered. The envelope sat between us like a living thing, humming with potential. Its seal gleamed under the harsh red glow of the warning lights flashing across Adrian's monitor. My fingers itched to open it, but fear tangled with curiosity. "Go on," Adrian urged softly. I slid a nail under the flap, breaking the seal. Inside lay a series of papers, each one precise, typed, and impossibly official. At first glance, I thought they were contracts, but then my eyes snagged on the numbers. Every debt I had ever carried, listed, matched, erased. Rent, credit cards, my mother's hospital bills, all accounted for, wiped away in a single stroke of generosity. My chest tightened as relief surged hot and overwhelming. I could almost see my landlord tearing up the eviction notice, my mother smiling when the clinic confirmed her balance cleared. Yet the relief was edged with unease. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" Adrian leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. "Because paying debts isn't enough. It's about investing in the person who carries them." Before I could respond, he pulled out another packet, this one bound with a brass clip and embossed with the sterling crest. Across the cover, Fellowship Agreement. I opened it, scanning the headings. 6 months, salary, housing stipend, creative freedom. My role, Innovation Lab Fellow. My hands trembled as I imagined working in rooms filled with prototypes and breakthroughs, but my voice cracked as I asked the question burning in me. "What's the catch?" Adrian's eyes softened, but his tone was firm. "The catch is responsibility, transparency, empathy, integrity. You won't just observe, you'll lead. Every choice you make will ripple outward." I sank back, overwhelmed. The offer felt like a lifeline, but also a chain binding me to something larger than I could grasp. And then, as if to remind me of the stakes, the red glow of his monitor flared brighter. System breach. Security compromised. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, their echoes reaching us even in this sealed office. Adrian rose fluidly, retrieving a sleek tablet from his desk. On its screen, I saw maps of the tower, glowing icons marking breach points, labs, secure wings, data hubs. "They're targeting the Innovation Lab," Adrian said grimly. "If they succeed, years of work could vanish." He turned to me, his gaze sharp. "If you accept this fellowship, your work begins now." My breath caught. "Now?" He nodded. "This isn't theory. It's crisis. You'll coordinate, protect, decide. The lab isn't just glass and machines. It's hope, and someone wants to extinguish it." I hesitated, staring at the folder still in my lap. My signature line glared back at me, waiting. I thought of my mother, her weary smile. I thought of my debts, my failures, my longing to matter. And then I thought of the bus, the moment I chose to give when I had nothing. My pen hovered. Then, with a trembling hand, I signed. Ink flowed across the page, binding me to a future I couldn't fully understand, but knew I couldn't refuse. Adrian's eyes gleamed with approval. "Welcome to Sterling's Innovation Lab." He clasped my hand firmly, not as a benefactor to a recipient, but as a partner welcoming an equal. Before I could absorb the moment, the sirens outside grew louder. The lights dimmed, plunging the room into shadow. Adrian's voice cut through, calm but urgent. "They've triggered the next phase. We need to move. Lockdown will seal the corridors in 60 seconds." The office seemed to shrink, the air charged with urgency. The envelope and contract weighed heavy in my pocket. I was no longer an outsider. I was part of this storm. As I followed Adrian out of his office toward the lab's secure wing, the overhead lights dimmed unexpectedly, plunging the corridor into shadow. His voice, calm but urgent, cut through the darkness. "They've just triggered the next phase of the breach. Internal lockdown is imminent." Behind us, the heavy security doors began to slide shut with a mechanical groan. My footsteps echoed in the narrowing passage as I realized that stepping into Sterling's world meant navigating threats from both outside and within, and that my very presence here might hold the key to stopping whoever was determined to bring this empire to its knees. Alarms blared as we dashed down the corridor. My ordinary life had never felt more surreal. The stark red strobes painted frantic patterns on the marble walls, and every footstep echoed like a drumbeat in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. In that moment, I realized that the sanctuary I'd been invited into was already crumbling around me. The hallway pulsed with chaos. Sirens wailed in sharp intervals, red strobes flaring across the marble walls like warning beacons. Adrian Sterling strode with measured urgency, his silver hair gleaming under the emergency lights, his jaw set. I followed, my breath ragged, heart slamming as though trying to escape my chest. Around us, employees darted in every direction, some clutching files, others whispering into headsets, their faces pale. The building, which had seemed pristine and invincible minutes ago, now felt fragile, trembling under invisible assault. "Stay close," Adrian commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. He handed me a small headset. "Channel 3. Coordinate evacuations." I fumbled with the earpiece, static crackling before a dozen frantic voices bled through. "Smoke in stairwell 2. Generator offline. We need clearance for the east wing." My throat tightened, but I pressed the button. "This is your name," I said, forcing authority into my tone. "Zone 1, east stairwell. Zone 2, west exit. Zones 3 and 4, hold until confirmation. Move quickly, but stay calm." My words echoed back through the network, brittle yet steady. Slowly, the panic in their voices shifted into action. Orders became coordinated, footsteps purposeful. I realized with a jolt, I was helping. Adrian led me into the security control center. The air smelled of burnt wiring, sharp and metallic. Monitors flickered, some already black, others screaming messages. System failure. Lockdown engaged. Breach detected. Security staff scrambled, sweat dripping down their temples, fingers flying across keyboards. Sparks hissed from a cable. The hum of servers stuttered like a failing heartbeat. Adrian stepped to the central console, his presence immediately anchoring the room. "Bring generator B4 online. Isolate West network. Protect Lab C. His tone was calm, commanding. The staff obeyed instantly. I mirrored his steadiness, relaying updates into the headset. Generator reboot initiated. Stairwell 3 secured. Alpha team en route. My palms were slick, but adrenaline steadied my voice. Every instruction mattered. Lives depended on clarity. Through a side window, I glimpsed smoke curling through the stairwell. Employees stumbled down the steps, guided by a young intern whose voice cut through panic. Adrian pointed at the screen. Identify her. Reinforce her, I relayed the order. Seconds later, a team confirmed. Support in place. Relief rippled through me. Small victories in the storm. Then, the monitors blinked. One by one, feeds went dark, replaced by static. The room plunged into half-darkness as overhead lights flickered. A guard cursed, slamming the console. Sparks erupted from the corner fuse box, showering embers onto the floor. Adrian's jaw clenched. Backup systems, now, he barked. His calm cracked into urgency, and that shift terrified me more than the alarms. I pressed the headset button. Teams report, Stairwell 2, East Lobby, confirm status. Silence answered. Static swallowed their voices. My chest tightened. We were blind, deaf, trapped. The last monitor sputtered, showing a grainy feed of the main lobby. Figures moved in the smoke. Too many. Too organized. Not panicked employees. Intruders. Adrian, I whispered. He saw it too. His storm-gray eyes darkened. Not with fear, but with resolve. He leaned over the console, fingers flying as he tried to reroute power. The screens blinked, stuttered, then died completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the pulse of red strobes lit our faces, painting them in harsh shadows. My own reflection in the glass looked ghostly, unrecognizable. Someone caught between ordinary survival and extraordinary responsibility. The silence after the collapse was worse than the alarms. The staff froze, their breaths shallow, their confidence evaporating with the screens. Adrian straightened, shoulders squared. This isn't over, he said firmly, though the weight in his voice betrayed the storm beneath. He turned toward me. Stay calm. We adapt. But my heart pounded so violently, I thought it might shatter my ribs. I gripped the console for balance, the cool metal grounding me. In that moment, I realized this tower wasn't just under attack. It was a battlefield, and I was no longer a bystander. My decisions would matter. My courage, or my collapse, could tip the scales. The spark-lit shadows danced across the faces of the security team as they scrambled in the failing light. In the gloom, Adrian's silhouette loomed, shoulders squared against the collapsing systems. My headset's static hissed with each faltering heartbeat. And then, the final monitor blinked out, casting us into darkness that felt more suffocating than any smoke-filled corridor. In that suspended moment, I realized our crisis had only begun, and that the very tower built to protect innovation was now a trap, whose walls closed in with every failing circuit. The reinforced doors hissed open, revealing a corridor lit with sterile white light. Every step I took echoed with the weight of secrets buried beneath polished steel and glass. I had expected computers and experiments, but not the living heartbeat of something far greater and far more dangerous. This was no ordinary laboratory. It was a vault of destinies. The air in the corridor felt colder, thinner, almost metallic. The white walls gleamed as though scrubbed of any imperfection, yet the silence between the soft hum of machines carried something oppressive. Adrian walked ahead of me, his pace measured but urgent, his eyes scanning every ceiling panel and wall seam. I followed, my palms sweating despite the chill. Each door we passed bore cryptic labels: Biosyn Integration Lab, Neural Dynamics, Energy Conversion Core. They were words that meant little to me in the moment but dripped with significance. Every sealed chamber we passed whispered of projects too powerful or too dangerous for the public eye. We reached a central intersection. The floor here was glass, beneath which cables pulsed with light like veins carrying lifeblood. I crouched, staring down into the shimmering flow, realizing it wasn't just power, it was information. Entire streams of encrypted data moving beneath our feet, silent currents holding secrets that could topple empires. "Keep moving," Adrian urged, his voice low. "They're already here." The reminder jolted me back into motion. My footsteps rang louder than I intended, echoing like betrayals. My throat was dry as we approached the final set of reinforced doors, taller than any vault I had seen. Adrian pressed his palm against the biometric scanner. A sterile female voice intoned, "Identity verified. Welcome, Mr. Sterling." The doors split open with a hiss. Cold, sterile air washed over us, laced with antiseptic and ozone. Inside lay the heart of the tower. The laboratory was cavernous, its ceiling lost in a haze of light. Rows of glass cylinders lined the walls, each filled with shimmering liquid that pulsed faintly, as though alive. Within them floated fragments of technology, chips, circuits, crystalline cores that glowed with eerie light. Suspended above the floor was a central sphere, a massive orb of mirrored glass wired into countless cables. Its surface reflected my wide-eyed face back at me, distorted, alien. "What is this?" I whispered. Adrian's expression was unreadable. "It's what they're after." Before I could ask, a panel in the wall flickered on. Surveillance feeds stuttered into view. Intruders in tactical gear moving closer, step by step, cutting through security like knives through silk. My stomach clenched. Adrian strode to a console near the orb, his fingers gliding across a holographic interface. "This lab contains prototypes, bioengineered processors, self-learning cores, quantum arrays. If they take even one fragment, the balance of power shifts forever." The weight of his words pressed on me like chains. I turned to the glass cylinders. Inside, one fragment pulsed brighter than the rest, a shard of crystal threaded with glowing veins of light. It pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I found myself stepping closer, unable to look away. "Careful," Adrian said sharply. His eyes locked on me. "Some of these are bonded to biometric frequencies. You touch the wrong one. You may never walk out." I jerked my hand back, heat rising in my cheeks, but the shard continued to pulse, as though calling to me. The alarms blared again, louder this time. The lab shook as distant explosions rumbled through the tower. Lights flickered. Adrian muttered, "They've breached the second level." His hands flew faster over the console, sealing off corridors, rerouting systems. Then the room dimmed. The orb above us glowed, its mirrored surface flickering with internal light. A voice emanated from it, not cold and mechanical, but strangely human. "Intrusion detected." Activating contingency protocol, I froze. Did that thing just speak? Adrian didn't look up. The central core is more than hardware. It's adaptive intelligence. It doesn't just protect data. It anticipates threats, sometimes too well. As if to prove his point, the orb's glow intensified. Walls slid open, revealing hidden turrets and reinforced blast shields. A low hum vibrated through the floor as defense systems activated. But then, the orb shifted again. Its mirrored surface rippled like liquid, and for a fraction of a second, a face appeared. Not Adrian's, not mine. A woman's. Her features delicate, her eyes luminous, her expression hauntingly sad. I stumbled back. "Adrian, there's someone in there." He hesitated, just long enough for me to know it wasn't an illusion. His silence was an answer. Before I could demand more, gunfire rattled from beyond the doors. Shouts echoed down the corridor. The intruders were seconds away. Adrian turned sharply. "Listen to me. If they break through, the shard you saw, the one resonating with you, you must take it, hide it, protect it at all costs. Me." "Why me?" My voice cracked, disbelief knotting in my chest. "Because it chose you. Adrian said simply. His storm gray eyes softened for the first time. I don't know why, but I trust it more than anything else right now. The lab trembled violently as charges detonated outside. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Adrian shoved a device into my hand, a small metal case lined with velvet. Put it inside when the time comes. I clutched it, my fingers trembling. The weight of destiny had never felt heavier. The reinforced doors shuddered as blasts tore at their frame. Metal warped. The core's glow flared, the woman's face flickering across its surface once more, her lips forming words I could not hear. And then, the doors cracked. The reinforced doors buckled under another blast, a fissure of light splitting their steel surface. Sparks cascaded in showers across the sterile floor. My breath froze as the core pulsed brighter, its mirrored skin rippling with the ghost of that woman's face. Adrian turned to me, his eyes burning with urgency. Now, he said, it's your choice. The next second, the doors gave way, and the lab's secrets were no longer safe. Cornered, but undeterred, we prepared to defend our vision against unseen threats. Our heartbeat the only rhythm in the suffocating hush of that underground lab. Every siren, every tremor through the concrete walls, served as a reminder that our work was worth protecting, even if it meant standing shoulder to shoulder against an enemy we could neither see nor predict. The reinforced doors groaned, their steel surface warped from repeated blasts. I pressed my palms against the cold console, forcing my breath to steady. Beside me, Adrian's face was a study in calm resolve, though the tightness around his jaw betrayed the gravity of our situation. The lab's emergency lights pulsed red, bathing the prototypes in a sinister glow. Every flicker felt like a countdown. We moved quickly, transforming the lab into a fortress. I dragged heavy crates of components, wedging them against weak seams of the door. Adrian rolled steel carts into place, bracing them with clamps and cables scavenged from workbenches. Our movements were frantic, yet purposeful. Two people improvising in the crucible of crisis. This isn't about stopping them forever, Adrian said, his voice low but fierce. It's about buying time. For the technology. For the future. I nodded, wiping sweat from my brow. My gaze fell on the prototypes scattered across the room. The water purifier still humming softly, the medical drone perched on its charging pad, the biosensor glowing faintly with diagnostic light. Each one represented lives saved, hope reborn. If those intruders captured them, they wouldn't become tools of salvation. They'd be twisted into weapons, or hoarded as bargaining chips. They can't have this, I whispered, my fists tightening. Adrian glanced at me, his storm-gray eyes unyielding. Then we stand together. And we hold. The first impact came like thunder. The barricaded door shuddered, dust raining from the ceiling. A second blow followed, louder, angrier, splintering metal at its hinges. My pulse raced. I dove for the workstation where we'd salvaged drone rotors earlier. With trembling hands, I wired them into a crude defense, blades whirring into a sharp-edged barrier that could slice through intruders' equipment. Adrian worked beside me, modifying handheld EMP devices. These will fry their comms, he explained. Sparks crackled as he tested the circuit. The faint ozone smell filled the air, harsh but reassuring. He pressed one into my hand. Aim low. Take out their gear before you take out them. I swallowed hard, gripping the device. This wasn't supposed to be my life, fighting saboteurs in a secret lab beneath a skyscraper. But survival had stripped away disbelief. There was no time for fear. Another explosion tore through the air, rattling the barricades. The drone blades shrieked to life, sparks scattering like fireflies. The sirens screamed louder, drowning out my hammering heartbeat. Adrian and I exchanged a brief nod, the kind soldiers must share before a battle. The door cracked. A jagged fissure opened, spilling smoke into the lab. Shadows loomed on the other side, dark, faceless, relentless. I hurled the first EMP. It detonated with a low hum, collapsing their radios into static. Sparks cascaded as weapons flickered offline. Adrian followed with precise strikes, disabling their breach tools. The intruders cursed, their shouts muffled by the steel barrier. For a moment, the tide turned. But only for a moment. A metal rod pierced the fissure, prying it wider. The barricades screeched as they shifted under the strain. My chest tightened. I lunged forward, slamming another crate into place, but it wouldn't hold long. "Back!" Adrian commanded. His voice was calm, but urgent. We retreated behind a steel workbench, the last cover between us and the prototypes. The glow of the core, the massive mirrored sphere in the center of the lab, intensified, as if it sensed the danger pressing closer. Its surface rippled again with the faint outline of the woman's face. Her lips moved silently, words I couldn't hear. The fissure burst open. A flood of masked figures surged into the lab, their boots pounding the concrete, their movements swift and coordinated. They carried stun rifles, shock batons, gear designed to subdue without hesitation. Their eyes, cold behind visors, fixed on the prototypes. I screamed, swinging the EMP device with trembling hands. It pulsed, frying one attacker's rifle mid-charge. Sparks flew, the weapon collapsing into useless metal. Adrian seized a fallen tool and fought like a man decades younger, striking with precision, his every motion protective of the prototypes rather than himself. Chaos consumed the lab. Blades whirred, sparks flew, alarms wailed. I ducked, dodging a baton that scorched the air near my head. Pain seared through my arm as another weapon grazed me, but adrenaline shoved the agony aside. My only thought: defend the machines, defend the mission. Adrian shouted, "Get to the core!" I stumbled toward the glowing orb, clutching the small velvet-lined case he'd given me earlier. The shard, the pulsing crystal, still throbbed in its cylinder, resonating with my heartbeat. I knew what he meant. If we couldn't hold the lab, we had to protect the shard. I lunged forward, reaching for it. And then, the air split with a voice, amplified and merciless. "Enough." The intruders froze. Their leader stepped through the smoke, removing her mask. My heart stuttered as recognition slammed into me. Elizabeth Hawthorne, board member, power broker, Adrian's fiercest rival. Her eyes blazed with fury and vindication. "Adrian," she spat, "you've endangered everything. I warned you your experiments would destroy this company. And now you've dragged her into it." Her gaze cut into me like a blade. Adrian stiffened, jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "No," she snapped. "I understand perfectly. You've turned this place into a battlefield. And for what? Idealistic fantasies that will never scale beyond prototypes." She turned to her soldiers. "Take the core. Secure the shard." The intruders surged forward again, weapons raised. I backed away, clutching the velvet case. Adrian's eyes met mine, fierce and unyielding. "We—" "Hold the line," he whispered. "Together." But then the silence shattered. The door's inner bolts began to grind backward, overridden by an external manual release. Footsteps, heavy and purposeful, thundered through the metal tracks. The lab's sealed vault depended on a failsafe that no longer functioned. I backed away as the door splintered under a final, brutal blow, shards of wood and concrete raining down. Through the jagged gap, a silhouetted figure stepped into the smoky yellow light, its features obscured, but its intent clear. My heart lurched as I realized our adversary was neither desperate nor hapless, but determined, and now that they had found us, there was nowhere left to run. Face to face with the intruder, every decision I'd made rushed back in an instant. Every late-night worry, every leap of faith, every scrap of ingenuity that had carried me from a city bus to this hidden lab now converged on this single, impossible moment. Elizabeth Hawthorne's presence filled the shattered doorway, her silhouette carved sharp against the red strobe lights. She didn't need soldiers or smoke to command the room. Her cold, deliberate gaze cut deeper than any weapon. The intruders fanned out behind her, disciplined and ready, but their movements were only an echo of her authority. I stood frozen, my body torn between fear and defiance. The air reeked of burning circuits, of sweat, of adrenaline too heavy to breathe. My mind raced back to the bus ride, to the frail man who had first shown me gratitude, to the golden pen glinting in sunlight. How had those quiet beginnings led here, to this crucible of conflict? Adrian Sterling moved to stand at my side, his posture rigid, protective, his storm-gray eyes locked onto Elizabeth. "This lab exists because the world needs it," he said, his voice steady. "Not because the board approves or denies." Elizabeth's lips curved in a cold smile. "You've always hidden behind noble words, Adrian. But let's call this what it is. Recklessness. Bringing her in?" She jabbed a finger toward me. "A civilian with no clearance, no training. Do you even understand the liability?" Her accusation struck like a slap, but before Adrian could answer, I stepped forward. My legs shook, but my voice carried. I offered a seat on a bus. That's all. And somehow I ended up here, because compassion still matters, even when the world tells you it doesn't. You call me untrained, but I've lived hardship. I know what these prototypes can mean for people who have nothing. For the first time, Elizabeth blinked, her mask of contempt faltering. I pressed on, heart pounding harder than the alarms. That purifier saved water in front of my eyes. That drone can deliver medicine where no road exists. And that biosensor detects pathogens in minutes instead of hours. These aren't fantasies. They're lives waiting to be saved, and placed a hand on my shoulder, silent, encouragement. His eyes told me my words mattered. Together, we faced her. Elizabeth's soldiers shifted uneasily. They weren't faceless anymore. They were men and women who had heard my words, who had families, who had seen suffering too. One of them glanced at the humming water device, his visor reflecting its glow. Elizabeth's jaw tightened. "You think heartstrings win wars? You think sentiment fuels shareholders?" She swept a hand at the prototypes. "These machines, without scale, are just toys. And if one fails in the field, the lawsuits will bury this company before it saves a single soul." Her words sliced, but I steadied myself. "Failure is the price of progress," I shot back. "And withholding these inventions, locking them away because they're not perfect, that's the real danger. People are dying now. These can't wait." For a long moment, silence thickened the air. The only sound was the pulse of backup generators and the faint whir of drone blades still spinning in the corner. Finally, Elizabeth exhaled, the edges of her authority fraying. "You don't understand the stakes." Adrian's voice cut through the tension, low and unwavering. "No, Elizabeth, you don't. Sterling Enterprises was built on courage, not caution. My father taught me that. And so did every person who gave us their last dollar, their last hope, believing we would do more than count profits." Elizabeth's gaze flickered, a storm behind her eyes. She turned sharply, signaling her soldiers to stand down. "This isn't over," she warned. "The board won't allow it. You're gambling with more than your own legacy, Adrian." With that, she retreated, her footsteps echoing like a gavel down the corridor. Her soldiers followed, shadows swallowed by smoke. I exhaled shakily, the adrenaline draining from my limbs. My knees trembled, my chest heaved. Adrian bent to retrieve a fallen memo, its pages crumpled from Elizabeth's grasp. He handed it to me. The words were blunt, printed in sharp black ink. "Discontinue fellowship. Cease all prototype operations immediately." Board intervention pending stared, my stomach twisting. All the progress, all the hope was being smothered, not by sabotage, but by bureaucracy. "They'll bury it," I whispered. "Everything we've built. Everything we've seen." Adrian's eyes burned with defiance. "Not if we fight." I folded the memo, slipping it into my pocket. Its weight was heavier than any weapon. Around us, the prototypes hummed softly, as if urging us forward. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about defending a lab. It was about defending vision itself. A choice stood before me: retreat into silence, or rise into purpose. My heart knew the answer before my lips could form it. As the sound of approaching security teams grew louder outside the lab's reinforced door, I slid the crumpled memo into my pocket and turned to Adrian, determination blazing in my eyes. "We can't let them win," I said, voice low but unyielding. He nodded, gaze fierce. "Then we fight from within," he replied. The consoles hummed, screens flickered back to life, and we prepared to take back control of our own future, knowing that every second counted, every choice carried weight, and the next move could decide whether our prototypes would change the world or be buried forever by the very empire we served. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into a future I never dared imagine. My heart hammered against my ribs as sunlight flooded the lobby, washing away the smoke and alarms of the past hours. Every face I passed greeted me with cheers and applause, but all I could feel was the pulse of possibility coursing through my veins. The lobby of Sterling Enterprises no longer resembled the battlefield we had left below. Smoke had cleared, alarms had quieted, and in their place came waves of applause. Employees lined the marble halls, clapping, cheering, some with tears streaking down their faces. They weren't celebrating a company. They were celebrating survival, vision, and hope. I walked beside Adrian Sterling, my steps unsteady, but purposeful. The grandeur of the marble columns, once intimidating, now felt like a stage where something profound was being written. Every clap echoed inside me, not as recognition of what I had done, but as a reminder of what I had chosen: to stand, to fight, to believe. Adrian lifted his hand, and the applause softened into reverent silence. His voice carried through the atrium, rich with pride and resolve. Today we faced more than sabotage. We faced doubt, fear, and the weight of complacency. But thanks to the courage of one among us, we stand not defeated, but renewed. He turned, his gaze finding mine. My cheeks burned. My heart thundered. "Colleagues," he declared, "I introduce to you our new project lead for community innovation. Your name." The applause erupted again, louder, fiercer. I felt the weight of countless eyes and the warmth of their belief. My throat tightened. For a moment I doubted whether I could speak at all. But then I stepped forward, into the golden shaft of sunlight streaming across the polished floor. I spoke not with rehearsed words, but with the truth carved into my bones. I was no one. A commuter on a bus, weighed down by bills and fears, clinging to survival. And yet, a simple act, a seat given, a bottle of water offered, brought me here. That moment taught me something. Compassion can move mountains, even if it begins in silence. Faces watched, wide-eyed, leaning into every word. I raised my voice. We are here not because of luck or wealth, but because of choice. Every prototype in those labs exists because someone chose to dream bigger than fear. And now it's our duty to ensure those dreams reach the people who need them most. This isn't just innovation, it's humanity in motion. By the time I finished, my voice shook with tears. The crowd roared with renewed applause, a wave of affirmation that surged through me like fire. For the first time, I believed in my own voice. Adrian stepped forward, pressing a sleek card into my palm. Its surface gleamed with the sterling crest, but beneath it, new words shimmered. Your name, Project Lead, Sterling Innovation Fellowship. My name, etched in permanence. My destiny, no longer borrowed, but claimed. I traced the letters with trembling fingers, overwhelmed by their weight. That card wasn't paper. It was a promise, binding me to every life waiting on the other side of innovation. The celebration swelled around us, colleagues shaking my hand, security officers offering nods of respect, assistants congratulating me breathlessly. Yet amid the chaos, I felt a profound stillness. I thought of my mother, of her quiet resilience. I thought of the eviction notice that had haunted me, of the bills stacked on my counter. And I realized all of it had been leading here. Every hardship, every stumble had prepared me for this moment. Simone, Adrian's assistant, appeared at my side, her clipboard tucked neatly against her arm. "Ready to see your office?" she asked with a small, knowing smile. I followed her down the hall, past the portrait gallery. The gazes of former CEOs, once stern, now felt like silent benedictions. Their eyes seemed to say, "Carry it forward." At the end of the corridor, Simone opened a door engraved with new lettering. Project Lead, your name. Inside was a space bathed in sunlight, its whiteboards lined with sketches of pilot projects, its desk already stacked with reports awaiting action. It was not just an office, it was a launch pad. I stood at the window, overlooking the city. Traffic streamed below, lives weaving together in a tapestry of ordinary days. But from here, it no longer felt ordinary. I could almost sense the rhythm of humanity, each heartbeat a reminder of what remained to be done. I vowed silently that every project I touched would honor the compassion that had carried me here. When I turned back, Adrian was standing in the atrium below, coffee cup raised in a quiet salute. I lifted my own mug, etched with the sterling crest, and our eyes met across the distance. No words were needed. Gratitude, expectation, and purpose passed between us in a single nod. I had entered as a passenger, lost and unseen. I stood now as a leader, entrusted with a mission. This was more than survival. It was a calling. As I stepped out of my new office and toward the elevator, the lobby's laughter and conversation rose behind me. At the curb beyond the revolving doors, I spotted a familiar silhouette framed against the late afternoon sky. An old woman waiting patiently, bent but steadfast, her threadbare coat and worn cap instantly recognizable. My heart skipped a beat. The first person I had shown kindness to on that bus. Had she returned for me? Or was she a messenger bearing news I could never anticipate? Before I could move, the elevator bell chimed, its doors sliding closed with a soft whoosh. I pressed the button for the 10th floor, my pulse racing with questions. Had my act of compassion sparked a journey that would come full circle? And what new chapter awaited when the doors opened again? If this journey resonated with you, tap like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an innovation-packed story. Then drop your thoughts in the comments below to let me know which moments inspired you most, and share this video with friends who love real-world heroism and cutting-edge solutions.